I think cigars are so important to us because they are misunderstood by the majority.
Yes.
So when you have something that is so profoundly misunderstood by most people, and yet it's so meaningful to you, when you meet one other person that shares the affection in this most misunderstood thing, it's instant kinship.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is why every cigar lounge looks like this. It's people walk into places like this, and go, right? Except for us. We walk in and we're like, yep.
Yes.
Go. What's your story? What's your story? What's going on? And we already know that what we have in common is the thing that we have the least in common with everyone else in our lives that doesn't get this. And they can't understand it either. You know, they really can't.
Most definitely.
It's an amazing thing, the cigar culture and the cigar community, that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you believe in. If you walk into a cigar lounge, you can sit down with somebody and have a 2-hour conversation. You've never met them before, but you have a connection over cigars, and you understand how they feel, and they understand how you feel when it comes to cigars. Like, this is my zen. This is where I get a chance to sit back, to relax. You can have a great conversation. And when you try to explain it to other people, they don't get it.
Yeah.
They don't understand until, like, we've had plenty of friends that we've, brought them over into this realm, and they go, holy shit, now I understand why you enjoy it so much.
We also have to be careful that we don't, when we begin, we want this sense of inclusivity, but then it's very easy for us to get protective and exclusive.
Yeah.
And for that new person that walks in, if you walk into a new joint and you feel like you're interrupting something, that's a terrible first impression for someone walking in. So it's also important to maintain, as you create that culture, that you keep it inclusive enough where when someone walks in, sometimes you have to be the first one to say, hey, welcome in. Come on in. I haven't seen you before. Where are you from? This is Joe. This is John. That's an important part of preserving that culture.
Yes, it's almost a responsibility that you take when you become a regular at a lounge. That's your responsibility. Is you come in, you hang out with your friends, but you're also supposed to welcome any newcomers into the community.
It's also the responsibility of the retailer to make sure that you don't punish your best customers with less. I mean, I said this the other day. We're the only industry that punishes our best customers with less service.
How do you mean?
Like, in so many shops, when you become the regular and Joe walks in, it's like, oh, that's Joe. He always smokes Metropolitan Host. I know what he's got.
Yep.
Metropolitan Host.
I know exactly what you're saying.
He goes and gets it himself.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Sits down in the same chair.
Yeah.
Cleans his own ashtray.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Like, could you imagine that same thing in a restaurant? Oh, that's Joe. You're going to make a BLT today, Joe? Go ahead. Kitchen's open.
Right, exactly what you're saying. Is instead of just giving them the same, everybody should get the same level of service.
Yeah.
You have a high level of service, and this is who we are.
What do you get as a regular at a restaurant? And you forgot to make extra service.
You get extra service. You get discounts.
I got your back. Here's your table. Part of that is because there is a performative nature to service that is part of the show that other people see. It's not
and then
just
they want to become regulars.
It's not just for the VIP. It's for everyone else to see just how special this experience can be. And they double down. Then they want to be regulars too. I mean, there's nothing in the world that we can't acquire from our phones seated on the toilet. There's nothing that we can't buy. Mm-hmm. You can buy a house. You can buy a car. You can book a trip from the toilet. So the minute somebody physically walks into your restaurant, walks into your store, opens up a humidor, and physically purchases your cigar, you have to over-deliver on that experience rather than just give them the same experience that they can get on their toilet.
Most definitely.
And that's with those check-ins and the thank you and the, how are you enjoying it and what else can I do for you?
Yeah.
Those are all the things that online cannot do and will never beat.
Yeah, it's not the same as it was, 20, 30 years ago, because that human element is kind of jaded now, especially with social media, phones, COVID. When I walk in, my real job, I'm in sales. So when I walk into someone's office and I introduce myself, they're like, why are you here? You want to drop off a business card? I'm like, yeah, I want to see who I'm talking to. I want to know Who's this?
Right.
Who's that? And they're like, oh yeah, let me go get. They like get very confused that like some guy is walking into his business and want to like shake his hand. It's very
as valuable
different.
as these devices are, it's a social device.
Mm-hmm.
It's intended for communication, and we've lost the ability to communicate without that thing.
Yeah, there's nothing worse when you're in dinner and there's children here. They have a family, and it's supposed to be a good moment. Supposed to interact. How's everyone's day? What's going on in your life? But when they just give the kid the iPad, and then they give the kid in the stroller the iPad, and they just kind of just ignore the kids.
Man, you even see it when you go to bars, like drinking bars.
Yeah,
bars.
Everybody's on their phone,
and everyone's sitting at the bar, shoulder to shoulder, on Facebook.
Look at you know where else you see
drinking bar.
You know where else you see? You see it on the plane. You're sitting shoulder to shoulder with somebody for like 2, 3, 5 hours, and you don't say a single hello. How are you? You don't say nothing. It's become where
we see it less though in places like this. I think.
No, you do. You're right. But
and
it's become where 30 years ago it was the phone was an escape from reality. Right? You had reality, and the fantasy land was an escape from reality. But now it's become everybody's in the fantasy land, and the real world is an escape from the fantasy land.
Yeah.
Because you spend all day, every day, just sucked into this device, and you could be sitting next to someone saying, put the device down, say hello, and you'd have no idea how powerful just saying hello to somebody could be. They could be going through the worst moment in their entire life, and you could put the phone down and just say like, hey, my name is Justin, how are you? And it could change their entire life.
Talking to me, I don't know who he is.
But now another way you see it, go into an elevator with somebody, right? You spend 15 seconds in an elevator, and what does everybody do? They look down at the floor. The guy's sitting right next to you. You couldn't even say, hey, how are you? How's your day going?
Just say, what's up?
And they get off on the floor, have a great day.
Yeah.
It takes 15 seconds, and you could change that entire person's life.
I want to transition real quick to some...
Before we do that, we do have a question from the audience.
Okay. Oh, snap. Here we go. Yeah, so a federal judge basically told the FDA that you haven't provided enough conclusive evidence that's saying cigars are the same as all the other tobacco products that we deem tobacco nicotine. I think it's the deeming rule. You probably know more than this than I do.
Yeah, they lumped cigars, premium cigars, in with everything else,
and
like cigarettes and vaping products.
The cigar lobbyist groups provided a lot of information about cigars and scientific information, and the FDA kind of just shunned it. And there was a judge saying, there's all this evidence here. I don't like what you did, and we're going to cut off the deeming rule for premium cigars. It's going to get its own definition, which was the big thing.
It's in the most limited nature of cigars being handmade premium cigars. That is the specific category that has now been afforded a tremendous amount of relief in our ability to just do business. There are still restrictions for flavored cigars, for cigars that don't fall into that specific category and definition. So there's still some challenges. But what I think was so refreshing about what happened yesterday was the fact that a judge, just plainly based on evidence and facts, ruled that the FDA did not follow the guidelines and the procedures and the law for that matter, and that their overreach was unacceptable. And the fact that that was applied to something like this, I mean, I can't think of a piece of legislation or a ruling that in any way has favored tobacco, ever. It's always increasing age, increasing restriction, smoking bans. There have been very few, with the exception of a couple tax laws, been very few things that have been favorable. And the only reason that occurred was because their overreach was so egregious that he had to rule in favor of a category that he probably didn't want to.
No, but like to your point is he just used common sense and logic and saw the evidence at hand and said, I can't agree with what you guys are doing. I think what you guys are doing is unlawful, is incorrect, and I'm going to agree and rule in favor of the cigar industry,
From
which
a practical
is
sense,
huge.
What this has done, though, is since 2007, President Obama at the time gave FDA authority. It wasn't until 2014 that the FDA finally said, okay, now we're going to get around to cigars as a category, which included premium. Then 2016 was when ultimately that deeming rule went into effect and was immediately met with litigation. Now it's 2023. So arguably it's been a decade of uncertainty. And it is very difficult to develop a real business plan with that level of uncertainty. You know, I mean, when you're planning a product or planning a launch or planning whatever, you're talking years out before you can actually launch. I mean, we moved quickly with Suma and that's 2 years almost of development. To think of what has taken place in that amount of time, things changed so rapidly that it would cause projects to be canceled, cause projects to be delayed, have to be reworked, just based on the what if of regulation. Now we have clarity. But it's not over. So all the FDA has to do is tomorrow say, we're going to start regulating handmade premium cigars, and here's our deeming rule, and let's go to comment period and see what happens. However, I think it's probably unlikely because the judge reflected in his... And by the way, if you have not read the actual ruling, it's 12 pages. It's the best. I actually started giggling reading it because he was almost a bit snarky in his ruling. But he has put the FDA on notice using the evidence and facts and citing the studies and the statistics in his ruling. I think that's set a bar incredibly high. And the reality is, by the way, FDA didn't even want tobacco in the first place. That's what the ATF was for. So they got given something that they didn't want to regulate, didn't know how to regulate, regulated the most dangerous part of it, and everyone agreed that ours was the most difficult to comprehend, which is why there were two options for regulation in the first place in 2014 that then they ignored and just said, forget it. Let's do everything.
Yeah, because we talk about it all the time, and I'm sure you know this person, but we've had on the podcast a few times a man named Josh Abersky. He's one of the leaders for the Premium Cigar Association.
Yep. Great dude.
And the first time we had him on, he kind of broke down the numbers for us about the amount of and the whole circle of tobacco.
Yeah, this is wild.
Cigarettes. To premium cigar sales, what was it? 0.01?
No, it was less than 0.5%.
Yeah,
of
so
all the tobacco sales in the country come from premium cigars.
Yeah.
So over 99.5% of tobacco sales come from either cigarettes or
vape
or
like
you know
that.
the
All
Dutch
the rest.
Masters, the backwoods. Less than 0.5% comes from premium cigar sales. So his biggest argument was, why are you regulating these the same way? If it was 50-50, I get it. But one is 99.5% and the other is 0.5%, and you're regulating them the same way. They're not the same thing.
The answer would have been tobacco is tobacco, nicotine is nicotine, tobacco is addictive, all tobacco has risk, and therefore the FDA's crusade is to mitigate the risk to the most exposed populations. The more compelling evidence was on the usage. And once they got to the fact that the reality is 0.3 of 0.3%, something like that, of youth had identified as a premium cigar being something they use,
Right.
which the judge cited in his ruling. He said it's not even a
case.
Yeah, because like
there's no risk.
Because I'm in high school. I would
yeah.
never think. I'm thinking everyone smokes weed, smokes cigarettes. I
Yeah,
never thought about
kids
it.
aren't underneath the bleachers chain smoking cigars.
Yeah,
okay.
Especially now. Our risk today for young people is this
Is the phone? Yep.
and things that look and taste great and are easy to get. This has never been easy to get.
Yeah, kids don't have the
not-
money to spend on cigars.
and
Are you
it
kidding me?
It doesn't taste like what they like. It doesn't smell like what they
No,
like.
it doesn't.
You stink afterwards, which I happen to enjoy that aroma.
Yeah.
But let's face it, this is as unappealing as it could possibly be.
And we actually have another question from the audience, but real quick to finish on this topic was they talk about kids. They say, oh well, kids are gonna be smoking. If you look at the average age, I mean, look at this room full of people that smoke cigars. Average age in here is probably what? It's going to be over 30, maybe over 40.
Easily.
So there's no kids in here. Kids aren't smoking
Maybe one.
cigars. You know what I'm saying? So they say,
we've already done the other work. You have almost, I don't know if it's entirely federal, but most states are 21 to start in the first place.
To even pick up a cigar.
We ID. Retailers ID. I mean, I don't know a single retailer that takes a risk when it comes to youth access.
Yeah, absolutely not. They're like, listen, you're in the wrong spot. You got to get out.
That's right.
So we have another question from the audience.
What are the biggest
Great
cigar
question.
myths about the people who are uneducated about cigars?
Yes.
Fantastic question.
Most of the myths, and I even hesitate to say myth, but I think there's a lot of misconception about health as it relates to risk and usage.
Wow, look at this service.
Wow.
Shout out to Jen.
Look at this.
Wow, thank you.
Look at this service. Can you pass me mine, please?
Yeah, I'll
Otherwise,
get
I'm
you
going to
yours.
rip out my headphone here. Oh, this. I need this right now.
Thank you, Jen.
I
Appreciate
need
that.
this. I had no
Wow.
lunch, so you might as well just
Yeah, for
shoot
sure.
yourself up with caffeine,
Yeah, I would say the biggest is definitely health.
The health
first-
risks,
first
yes.
and foremost.
And I will. People get sick from smoking. I mean, that's just a reality. There is arguably nothing about this that is good for your body. But there is a lot about this that is good for your soul.
Yeah, I was going to say arguably.
And
arguably.
for me, the biggest distinction is this is a hobby. And other forms of tobacco, of nicotine, are habit. And I find that what you get addicted to here is the moments that this brings.
Yes, the experiences that
Whereas,
you have. Yes.
for example, someone who habitually smokes cigarettes cannot remember the moment with a cigarette because every moment is with one. It's not special.
Yeah.
The same with other forms of nicotine delivery, whether it's vaping, whether it's patches, whether it's gum, whatever you're doing, the product is nicotine. That is the last priority on handmade premium cigars. Nicotine is there, but it's reduced through curing. It's further reduced through fermentation. It's somewhat reduced through aging. And it's mitigated in blending. So, of course, it has nicotine, but if you look at all the other ways premium cigars are enjoyed, they are the smoke rests on your mouth versus into your lungs. They take longer, so it is certainly a moment in your day that you slow down and savor. And I think it really comes down to the misconception of habit versus hobby.
Yeah.
And I think people also generalize what they used to think of. This was not the hobby it is today 40 years ago. It was much more habit-like. But cigars were also less premium back then. Now this idea that this thing is handcrafted in such a way that's intended to create a flavor that's profoundly unique from this one that's right next to it, and these are the reasons why. There is no other nicotine delivery that is a hobby the way this is.
Yeah. And I would say, too, that, like you had said that there, arguably, this is bad for you, but there's actually been lots of research comparing premium cigars with, cigarettes and other smoking products. And they say that, having, one cigar a day or 1 to 2 cigars a day actually has, nil effect on your health in the long run because of the fact, as Mike was saying, that when you're smoking cigarettes, One, you're inhaling them, and you're smoking them all day long, okay? The average cigar smoker, is not smoking 2, 3, 4 cigars every single day, okay? They might smoke one a day. They might smoke, once a week whenever they get a chance. The average, cigar smoker. People like us might smoke a little bit more, but they're saying if you have the occasional cigar smoker is not doing anything to your health. You're not inhaling it. You're sitting, you're relaxing. There's much more benefits when it comes to, mental health and relieving your stress, because we've actually done an episode where we talked one of the, the leading causes of death in the United States is stress, right? Stress causes a lot of other things. Stress can cause stroke. Stress can cause heart ailments, right? Stress can cause a lot of... Suicide is another one that's caused by stress, okay? So if you have something that relieves that stress, it's doing more benefit to you than it is hurting you, okay? That's why, the gym is a great stress reliever for a lot of people.
Can't smoke in the gym, though.
Can't smoke in the gym. I do. I have a home gym, so... But... I would say another thing too, and this goes more along the lines of the actual cigar itself. A common misconception that a lot of people think is that a Connecticut wrapped cigar versus a Maduro wrapped cigar, they instantly think, oh, the Connecticut's going to be much easier, much milder smoke, which is not the case whatsoever. Okay, it looks like it has a lighter wrapper, so it might be a lighter smoke, but that is a big cigar myth and is a big misconception. It depends on, the blend of the cigar. In some cases, you will have a Connecticut, if they're having a milder smoke, they'll probably put on, a Connecticut wrapper to maybe work well with the blend, but it's not always the case. There's a lot of times where Maduro tends to be a little bit sweeter than a Connecticut shade wrapper.
He's smoking Ferio Tego Elegancia. That's the perfect example that shade wrapped cigars are not mild.
Right.
Because that cigar is full and rich and heavy and mouth-filling and dense. It's not strong. It's not an ass kicker, but it does not necessarily smoke the way it looks.
Right.
And another thing, and it's very, very simple. When you post a lot of cigar content on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, there's always people saying, well, you're going to die of lung cancer. You're going to die of this. You inhale cigars. That's a whole pack of cigarettes. Obviously, everyone in this room knows that you don't inhale cigars, and that's a big misconception. Everyone thinks you smoke a cigar, you're inhaling it.
So, a lot of blenders inhale.
I've heard that, actually, yes.
Every puff. But I've been in this business 24 years. Sadly, there are a handful of folks who are no longer with us. I don't know any of them who have passed from a smoking-related illness that weren't cigarette smokers also.
Because I always try to find cigar-related medical documents, like any studies of people actually inhaling cigars or dying from cigars or getting lung cancer from cigars, and I can't really find.
So part of the argument has been, well, there's not enough research. That's also because there's not a big enough problem.
Yeah,
right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Go back to what we had
100%.
Talked about with the percentage of sales, right? There's 99.5% of the sales in America come from cigarettes. So no wonder there's going to be a large database to pick your studies from. Not a lot of people are smoking
but there was
cigars.
There was also a serious national crisis as an effect of so much cigarette smoking that then caused research, development, mitigation, etc.
Yeah, there's not enough problems coming out of the cigar
there's
smoking.
No problem here.
There's no problem here.
A burn hole in a shirt is not a crisis.
There was another study that we did on that same episode, talking about the 1 to 2 cigars a day have nil risk on your health. We found a study that talks about health risk, and they normalized it. So what that meant was, for somebody that doesn't smoke cigarettes and doesn't smoke cigars, hasn't touched either of them, they would have a baseline of 1. Those that touched cigarettes, whether they currently smoke cigarettes or they have in the past, their increase of health risk was almost 100%. It went from 1.0 to 2.0. If you smoked strictly cigarettes all the time, it was like 2.5, 2. And they broke it down to all different categories, whether it was heart ailments, lung ailments, all these other different diseases. Those that smoked cigars only, never touched cigarettes, had zero impact on their health. It was. I don't want to say it was zero, but it was minimal. It was to the point where it did not show up on the scale.
Great.
So for those that are smoking cigars, it doesn't have as much of an impact as people think that it does. Oh, you're smoking, that's an impact. No, it's not an impact. There's been study after study after study, and I can personally say, like, this does much more for me on the good side than it does on the bad side. I haven't had any, physical effects whatsoever, but my mental health has been much better. Besides stinking, but hey, listen.
Speaking of effect, what effect is Suma having on you right now?
It is.
Well, considering I haven't really eaten anything, my head is a little spinny.
Good.
But feels good. It feels good.
I will say.
Draw's good. The burn's good. It actually
is.
I was canoeing a little bit, but we evened out. That was partially my fault because I was jibber-jabber.
I'm enjoying every puff of it, and I will say that. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the pairing with coffee. This is espresso. I have a cappuccino, and now we have espresso.
I like it better with the espresso.
The pairing is
killer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
For
I
me,
do
this
think
is,
that
this is pure fudge.
This is
for
nice.
sure. I can say now you say it.
From the first puff.
It's very nice.
When you say fudge, now that's what it reminds me. It's weird. It's weird when you're tasting a cigar and you're trying to pick up these flavors. Unless someone's talking about it or if it's in front of you. At least personally for me, I don't really get that. Until you said fudge, I'm like, oh shit. I have that. When you eat fudge, you have that.
Exactly.
It's
in
like
your mouth.
I was gonna say a dark chocolate where it's not like a super sweet, but it's kind of got that rich.
Yeah.
Like you have dark chocolate and it coats your mouth.
It's not fudge that you get in a plastic bag at the gas station.
No, it's fudge.
This is chef's fudge.
Dark chocolate
Savory,
fudge. Yes.
Decadent fudge.
So where do you see cigars going in the next 10 years, in the next decade? Being that this ruling just happened the other day, where do you see that going, and where do you see cigars as a whole going in the next 10 years?
I think people are looking for relief.
Mm-hmm.
And as things are becoming less social, people crave opportunities to socialize. And let's face it, this provides a very unique opportunity to socialize. I think that if you look at the cigar trends, it's really just a cycle. You see cycles in strengths and intensities. You see cycles in formats. You see cycles in pricing, and it's purely a result of a brand or a company needing to diversify. So, like in this moment in time, people are like, "Oh, Lanceros are really like coming back." Well, that's because 60s were the rage. So everyone led with the 60s and 70s and 80s, and now how are you going to expand your line? 38. And now Lanceros become the rage. So everyone starts doing Lanceros for the next 3 years, and then how are you going to diversify? 60.
Yep.
It's purely cyclical. So we are on the cycle right now, coming off of the face-melting Ligero bomb cycle.
Yeah, I could see that.
And into what I believe is much more in my wheelhouse, which is balance, flavor over ferocity. I think there is a return towards a degree of elegance in flavor, in format, that for me is certainly a welcomed restoration. But it's also something that I never abandoned either. So even over the years, we released Sterling in 2013 when everything was 60 ring gauge box press Nicaraguan Ligero face melting bombs, and we launched 4 sizes that didn't exceed a 46, that was shade wrapped and mild, creamy, and delicious. That was complete opposite of trend, but I also saw that as an opportunity to fill a hole.
Yes. Release something that not everybody has. Yeah. Everybody's pushing one thing. I'm going to go over here because why am I going to blend in with the crowd? If everybody's doing this, I'm going to do something else, because then what if somebody's going in there looking for, well, I don't want all of that. I can get that every single day. I want something else.
But I think what's the most exciting right now is having the handcuffs removed from a creative standpoint. The risk that anything you create might be pulled off the market, that's a level of risk that causes you to restrict creativity. So you couldn't come up with a new size. You couldn't change box quantities. You couldn't change, material changes for core items could be considered new products that would be subject to review and approval. With those restrictions now lifted, I think you are going to see creativity in the cigar industry that you have not seen in easily a decade.
All right.
So we have a question. So the question is, what do you see differentiating these lounges from other lounges that may not be doing so well, and then what is something that you hear from the consumer that is missing from the industry today?
It's when you travel around the country, every state, every municipality has a different set of restrictions. When you go to Texas, every single cigar shop has a bar, full bar, and nobody's there at half of them, which is astonishing because I'm like, if there was one cigar shop with a full bar in New Jersey, there'd be a line out the door.
I'm there.
I'm
there.
So there's so many different models and nuances market by market. But I think what you see is these sort of two schools of thought. One school of thought is this lounge is your lounge. We're here for you. You want a game on? We put the game on. You want to bring in X, Y, and Z? Bring it in. You can come in anytime. You can move the furniture around. This is your place. Make yourself at home. The other school of thought is this lounge is mine. And these are the rules. This is the service that we provide. Take it or leave it. And I see them kind of, there's less and less of that middle ground. And I actually think that's a very good thing because what's differentiating is the model. And this idea of trying to be something to everyone just does not work. So you can't have a very polished, high-end, high-service experience and then permit people moving furniture and people doing all the, it can't be both. You have to pick your model. This is what we are, and this is what we're not, and go all in on that model. And the places that are the most successful I've seen are the ones that have squarely identified what they are, what they're not, and they go all in. And I don't think there's a right or wrong, whether it's more social, there's lounges for you, or whether it's more polished, this is the business model and these are the rules. I think what's important is that people are taking their businesses more seriously than ever before. They're creating a business model and they're sticking to it.
So it's like along the lines. It's like along the lines of you had said you can't please everybody, and that's like a general rule of thumb for all walks of life, right? You can't please everybody. So do you, whoever that, whatever model you want, be that, and just go with it.
For me, it's the Gordon Ramsay model. Like if you ever watched Kitchen Nightmares, and he would walk into those restaurants, and there was like a tiki bar with a barbecue smoker outside and a menu that looked like a Greek diner.
He's like, pick one.
And portions, right. And so to me, that I always, if I walk into a joint and I'm like, all right, this is Kitchen Nightmares. Because you can tell, they have snacks over here. They have this over here. They have a lounge over here. They have cigars over there. It's like...
Yeah, you got conflicting ideologies. Yeah. You're like, you got to pick one,
can't do that
okay?
Anymore. You have to pick. You have to go all in, and you have to do it right. And going back to what we said before, the fact that everything we want is a click away, you have to differentiate yourself with an experience that you cannot get on this thing. And I think for those who are in this business for the long, or any business for that matter, if you're in a brick and mortar face-to-face business for the long term, it takes real discipline and discretion to say, this is what we are, this is what we're not, and this is how we are going to level up above click to buy.
I like it.
That's a great question.
I have a personal question.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's really for me and Justin, or Justin and I, but we have our own cigar brand that we just released about a year ago.
Shout out Blueprint.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, being some newcomers into industries, what would be some words of wisdom for people who are just starting a new brand and getting into this industry? Best practices to do.
Things to avoid.
Yeah.
Someone asked me the other day, I can't remember the exact question, but it was something like, how do I get your job? Like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And so I said, that's easy. You go to Berklee College of Music for 4 years, and you get a degree in drum smashing. Then you move to New York, and you do retail for 6 years with no promotion or raise. And then you move on to a next chapter. And then after 24 years of working your tail off, then you start a cigar business. And they looked at me like I was nuts.
Easy, right?
But that's a long business plan.
The reality is there is no rule book to go follow. There's no step-by-step thing.
Mm-hmm.
What I can tell you is when you learn a little bit of something, you feel like you know way more than you did before, but you don't know enough to realize how much more you still have to learn.
Sure.
24 years in, I know way more than I knew 24 months in, but I also realized just how much more there is that I'm just not going to learn, And we are living in a time where there is this need to be an expert. You can't just be a hobbyist. You have to be an expert. And I think that's disappointing because it takes away some of the enjoyment of just discovery. We have to get back to appreciating the process and progress.
Mm-hmm.
So I applaud anyone that's willing to put their money where their mouth is and try and build something. But you know as well as I do, there's no fast way to build a house. You have to start with a foundation. And if that foundation isn't built right, doesn't matter what you put on top of it,
it's going to fall down.
It's going to fall down. And we have eliminated the celebration of the foundation. And instead, people are just popping houses up and pointing to it.
Yes.
And that's a problem.
It's kind of like I heard something one time where it said it takes 20 years to become an overnight success. Right? And it's what you see now with this whole, going back to social media. And I don't want to harp on social media. I know we, beat that horse dead. But you see these people, right? And they just appear to come out on the scene. And you're like, man, I saw this person 5 months ago, and all of a sudden they got 1 million subscribers and this, that, and next. I said, yeah, but what you didn't see is the 5 years or the 7 years or the 10 years that they were posting shit or they were doing stuff and nobody knew who they were.
Yeah.
You didn't see all that. You just happen to see it now because they put all that work in and now they're big and they're popping up on your feed, but you didn't see the 10 years of shit. Yeah. Right? What's his name? Mr. Beast, right? Biggest YouTuber there is. Okay, he's got 100 million plus subscribers. Okay, guy spends millions of dollars every single video. People didn't realize that he was posting crap for like 10 years, just posting and creating videos and wasn't going anywhere. And then all of a sudden, in like 2 years, it just exponential. So people don't realize that. That's the story
of nearly every artist.
Yes,
right. Any great band, any great chef, any great artist who truly works their craft is doing it not to be big, but to be better. Right? I mean, a true artist knows that there is no such thing as perfect and that there's no such thing as arriving for that matter either. Like there's no finish.
Yeah, there's no, embrace the journey. Yeah.
I think we've lost that in business where there's suddenly this moment of arrival. I think you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And also, I mean, you're talking about building a cigar business. You have to do a lot of listening. I mean, it's not just put it out there and expect people to embrace it. And I'm evidence of that. I mean, hell, I've been traveling nonstop because it's just not that easy. You have to be willing to do all the extra work and tell the story and meet people and shake hands and say thank you and ask what can I do better. Learn from your mistakes, pivot, tweak. You have to be agile, and you have to be disciplined, and you have to be thoughtful. And I also have to be very clear on what I am going to do and what I'm unwilling to do. You know?
It goes back to what you had said with the with the lounges. Is you got to pick like, this is what I'm doing.
Right.
If that's what you want, if you want this person, that's not who I am. That's not what this brand stands for.
Bro, look at us.
You can get that elsewhere, but
we don't have limited editions every month. We don't have, this whole slew of store exclusives. We don't have significant marketing activations. It's just not who we are. We are who we are. We're small. We're boutique. We're family owned. We have a pretty big portfolio of cigars. It takes the same amount of effort to keep the good ones good as it does to make new ones.
Sure.
And I believe in core. So I'm going to invest my time and money keeping the great ones great and making sure that they're always in stock and they're always consistent every time you buy them. That's Ferio Tego model.
So what I got from that was immerse yourself in it, figure out your own path, and that's your business model.
What do they say? Embrace the suck, right?
Matt Ryan from the Atlanta
Embrace the
Falcons.
suck.
When he lost the Super Bowl, he said, "You got to embrace the suck. It's the only way you get better."
That's it.
So I know we're probably
Coming to the end here.
coming to the end, but I think what we're going to do now is probably take a quick little break. Before I have a couple more questions I want to ask her. I want to ask, obviously you're big into fashion. I definitely want to ask where that came from because we are both big into fashion. And I want to ask about, what the next thing coming for Ferio Tego is. But I do want to take a quick little break, grab a little refreshments, maybe a quick, snack or something, and then we'll come back and finish up the episode.
Drain the main vein, for sure.
All right? All right, we'll be back.
All right.